Got it. Okay. So good afternoon again, everyone, and welcome to today's Southern Education Leadership Initiative Prospective Fellows webinar. I am Kenita Williams, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at the Southern Education Foundation. We know that this is a very busy time for everyone. We're wrapping up semesters as well as, the holiday season and gearing up for what that looks like for you and your families. So we are very thankful for you joining us for this informational webinar and grateful for your time and interest in the fellowship. Ashley, you can go to the next slide. So just a little bit about the flow of the next hour or so, our time together. I'll start by giving a brief snapshot of SEF as an organization. That will be followed by a snapshot or overview of the SELI Fellowship. We will then transition to what I believe to be the most valuable aspect of today's discussion, which is hearing from SELI alumni about their firsthand experience with the fellowship. Then lastly, we will have a quick overview of the application process and then conclude with questions and answers and answer any concerns that you have. Quick note about Q&A. You can chat your questions in the box and we'll try to monitor those and answer along the way. But during that session, you can feel free to actually chime in or just continue to track your questions in the box. We ask, just housekeeping wise, since this is being recorded and will be shared out more broadly on our website, that you do please keep yourselves on mute unless you're going to jump in to ask a question, just so we can minimize any background noise. So next slide. So again, I think it's important to make sure we give you some good information and background of the organization that's actually leading the fellowship. So about the Southern Education Foundation, we are an organization based here in Atlanta or based in Atlanta, but we operate regionally, specifically across 17 states. So our work spans this broad regional footprint called the American South, with a few additional states north of the Mason-Dixon line, really thinking and tying our work to where there was chattel slavery. So that's a lot of where our region overlaps with. Our mission and work aims to advance education equitable policies and practices in our 17 states. And we do that through research, we do that through advocacy, we do that through leadership development. And we hope that those things will result in true racial equity, which we think or define as a state when race is no longer a reliable predictor of student success, and that every student, regardless of their background, can attain a high quality education that propels them to the opportunity-rich lives that they deserve. So SEF, I hope this is a background for you. I hope you've done some research on the organization, but some of you may know that we have this deep and long history in this race equity and education equity space. We were founded in 1867 in the wake of the Civil War to establish a system of public education for the newly emancipated population. And really also began to unite both Northerners and Southerners behind this idea of a collective responsibility of educating all people, no matter their race. So really for over 150 years, next year will be our 155 year in existence. We have worked in this space of access and opportunity for traditionally underserved or marginalized communities. First that was obviously Black communities, but now it's for Black students, other students of color, and students from low-income families. Today, we really do our work through three key strategies: government affairs and advocacy. We do research and policy, and we do leadership development, which SELI falls under. So I'll talk more about that in the next slide. And then lastly, I'll mention that we do work across the entire P20 continuum of education. So from early learning to and through post-secondary and workforce development. And that is important because that means the placements in our host site partners for SELI could fall anywhere on that continuum as well. Next slide, please. So more about leadership development, and I highlight this because SELI falls under our leadership development portfolio. SEF has a long legacy of leadership development work. For the overwhelming majority of our 150 years plus existence, we worked to develop the capacity of prominent leaders to rise to this challenge, to be at the helm of creating an education system that works for all children. Interesting fun fact here, you see pictured W.E.B. Du Bois, who was SCF's very first fellow in 1903. We played, I think, an important or critical role in supporting his work, his renowned work, The Souls of Black Folks. So, you know, leadership development is really part and parcel of SEF's DNA. So it's only natural that we would still be really intentional about continuing that work today. We just believe leaders are a critical part of achieving our mission. And we work to cultivate this constellation of equity-oriented change agents so that they have the will, they have the skill, they have the dispositions, the understanding, technical know-how of what it means to lead for racial equity. And so we offer research-based, practitioner-informed learning opportunities, professional learning opportunities to professionals across the continuum. So from our rising leaders with SELI to our more seasoned professionals that are our C-suite leaders in school districts through our Racial Equity Leadership Network, really hoping to, again, build this cadre of leaders that they're able to ensure deeper learning outcomes for every child, regardless of background. Next slide, please. So just quickly about a little bit about our leadership development, and this is important because it informs how we shape SELI or that experience. So this is our theory of change and how we shape our leadership development work. We call it a double helix model. In our opinion, effective leadership development takes a two-strand approach. The first strand is really about strengthening individual personal leadership and builds that racial equity posture in a leader at any level. And that really is that leader's understanding of their own leadership as a critical lever for change. And that means your willingness to step up to the challenge or rise to the challenge, your commitment to the work, your competencies and aptitude for the work. Like, we really work to build all of those things in the individual leader so that they can activate their leadership and use their positional power to really facilitate change in education, in opportunities, outcomes, policies, practice, systems, attitudes, all of those things. The personal leadership is an important lever for those things. In addition to the personal leadership, we believe that there's a strand that looks at systems change. So like, it's important that you understand your role as an individual, but also that you really understand what's happening in schools and in systems and in public education as a whole. So really understanding what it means to change systems, really about building your knowledge, awareness, and understanding of what's actually happening in schools. What does the data say about the nature and magnitude of disparities, racial disparities, particularly in the South? What are the drivers of these disparities, and what are some high leverage or other critical levers that you should be able to pull to really move that proverbial needle? So a double helix approach to leadership development. You can go to the next slide, Asley. So quickly, I will transition to talking more about SELI. And SELI is one of SEF's longest standing signature programs. As you see at the top, and I hope that this is a review for many, that the mission of SELI is to empower the next generation of innovators, thinkers, leaders to become effective change agents in education. So SELI, or some people say SELI, but we typically call it SELI, was developed in 2004, and it was created to mark the 50th anniversary of Brown v. Board, the watershed case, U.S. Supreme Court case that reversed the separate but equal doctrine. I think we all know Brown, but and we believe that there was still work to be done in fulfilling the promises of Brown and ensuring that all children, irrespective of race, received an excellent education. So we thought to do this, we needed to start to really cultivate this pipeline, particularly in the South, of these equity-oriented change agents. That is to say, a new or next generation of thinkers and leaders that had the big ideas, that had the hearts to really needed to carry out the work of Brown. And that this generation, we had some intentionality around giving this next generation of leaders opportunities where they could grow both academically and professionally to really create the skills to lead. And so we created SELI. And so SELI, really over the last year we've refined kind of what we think are the outcomes. And so one, it really is about building this talent pipeline in the South and stopping the brain drain. Like, we are trying to keep our talent in the South because we need it. It's about building that equity orientation, specifically a racial equity orientation in leaders. So understanding the importance of authentically centering race, power, privilege in discussions of how we serve students and why that's important, and being able to connect what we're seeing in schools to those things. And I think another really critically important point for SELI is that we are wanting to expose rising leaders to the various career avenues in education and really elevate education as a viable career option. I think often there's this misconception that being in education means you go be a teacher and then you can be a principal, and if you're really good, you can be a superintendent. And there's just so much that you can do to be in education. I've been in education literally over 20 years, and only 3 of those were spent in the classroom. So wanting to make sure we expose young leaders to the various career options in education. And so since 2004, we've had over 260 fellows. We are now going into our 17th year. And we believe that this has provided our fellows and our alum with just an unparalleled leadership development opportunity to work on equity issues in ways that they wouldn't have been able to do that. And we also, as important part of SELI, place in different organizations to help build the capacity of our partners. So we've placed in over 110 nonprofits, state agencies, school districts, institutions of higher education across our region. And the next slide will give you a little more of a glimpse into what these placements look like. So here, and we also have a document that I think is on our website that talks a little bit more about the placement sites, where our fellows have been, and this was just 2021. And so you see some were in school districts, some were in different nonprofits. We had 2 fellows at the Georgia Department of Education, one on our webinar today. We'll talk about that. And so we just want to make sure that they get firsthand experience across a wide variety of organizations, and also really give the understanding that a lot of different organizations go into shaping what the education experience like. It's not just what's happening in school districts. I do typically get a few questions about how placements are done, and so I'll just kind of address that now. So placements, there are a number of things that go into the placements for the fellows. First, but at a high level, it is really about the fellow's interest. So in your application, you will tell us what you're really interested in doing, your current skill set, like what level of work that you are at currently. We also have our host site who applies to host a fellow. So they give us a work plan. So it's also based on what they need and what they're looking for in a fellow that summer. So between those things, we try to match the fellows as closely as possible to their first choice or their interests. So next slide. So program logistics, just a quick look at the logistics. This is not an exhaustive list, but it highlights some of the major components. So the fellowship placement, I think everybody knows that it's an 8-week fellowship, and it is a full-time fellowship. Last year, obviously due to the pandemic, we've had to do some recasting or reimagining what that looked like. So there were some in-person fellowships, there were some virtual, there were some hybrid, but traditionally SELI is a full-time in-person 40-hour-a-week fellowship. And so the plan is to move forward with that. So anybody interested in doing SELI should plan to be in person at their placement site, unless, you know, the pandemic says otherwise, but that should be the plan. Again, 8 weeks, the dates, May 23rd through July 15th is the time of the placement, where you will be with your actual organization, the organizations that we just show on the previous slide. But your actual placement is bookended by 2 very important events. The first one is the orientation, where you will come. Oh, I didn't ask her to introduce herself, but when I turn it over to her, I will let her introduce herself. You will come to Atlanta to be with me and my colleague, Ashley, who is our Leadership Development Program Associate. And you will have 3 days of kind of intensive training, workshopping to really get you grounded in the education issues and prepared to go off to your placement sites. And so orientation attendance is a non-negotiable. So if you are planning to be in SELI, you need to be able to attend orientation in person here. And, you know, SCF will pay the cost to bring you here. And then after you finish your placement site, placement, you will then come back to us for a closing meeting. And that's another 3 days here in Atlanta with Ashley and the SEF team and me. And that's just an opportunity to really kind of share out your lessons learned, reflect on your summer experience, help SEF continue to think about how to refine and improve the program. And also just really think how you want to carry the work forward in your career. So those are the major meetings. I think everyone knows that this is a paid fellowship, which is why it's highly competitive because we give a pretty good stipend. Undergraduates are given a $4,500 stipend, and graduate level of master's, professional, doctoral students get a $5,000 stipend. And we cover your airfare, car mileage, lodging, for orientation and closing, and then we cover your travel expenses to and from your placement sites. But one thing to note, if you are having to relocate and for your placement, your stipend is used to help to try to cover some of your costs for housing during that summer. So next slide. So eligibility, very high level. SELI is for students. That's just what SELI is. So you do need to be a student. It'd be undergraduate. It could be a graduate level, doctoral program, law student, but you do actually need to be a student. Generally, the ages are between 20 to 35. Those are not absolute cutoff rigid age. That's just generally the population because age of the population because it is for rising leaders. I think, you know, we get questions about the age. Oh, I'm 19, but I'm a junior. Yes, please do still apply. I think what's most important is where you are in school, and we want you to be the equivalent of a junior. So you should be going into your junior year when you finish your fellowship. And so, or have completed those hours. There's no minimum GPA. We do look at GPA though, because we want to see how you're doing in school, but there is not a GPA requirement. All majors are accepted. We just want you to make sure you have a demonstrated interest in either education equity or social justice or education policy. We will talk about the application a little bit more, but some of the things that are really important are good writing skills. So really be thoughtful about that and demonstrating that in your application, critical thinking, you know, good interpersonal soft skills, those things. And applications are live on our website. We'll post it in the site, in the chat, but I think, you know, if you're registered for this, you probably have seen it already. And then they're due March 1st, 2022. If you are having any issues with that, you should reach out to Ashley or me personally and talk about an extension, and we do grant those on a case-by-case basis, but we'll recommend that you try to get your application in on time, if not early. And yeah, so one thing that we want to highlight is generally, we try to be very thoughtful about placements and do not try to make people relocate, but the willingness to relocate is critical. So you should be willing to relocate if you are part of SELI. And of course, reach out to me if you have any circumstances that we should take into consideration, but because we place all over the region and we are also trying to match based on need and skill set and interest, that may mean leaving Georgia to go to Texas to be able to meet that those requirements. So if you are not willing to relocate, you should probably not apply SELI, although it's not necessarily guaranteed that you will have to relocate. So I think that is it on a high level. I will check the box really quickly to see if any questions. So no questions have come up. So please continue to put your questions in the chat box, let us know, but I will actually turn it over to my colleague Ashley so she can walk you through the next section.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Ashley Goulade. I have the pleasure of introducing to what we think is the most valuable part of this Prospective Fellows webinar. And so during this segment, you will have the opportunity to hear from our alumni on their experience and for them to share a little bit more about themselves and their summer fellowship. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, you'll hear from Anthony Jones, who was a 2021 SELI Fellow and was placed at the Georgia Department of Education. He also was a graduate student at the time of his SELI Fellowship. Hi, Anthony. Followed by Antonia Adams, who was also a 2021 SELI Fellow and was placed at the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education. She was and currently an undergraduate student there. So before I pass it on, I just wanted to let the viewers know that we will open the floor for pressing questions after each speaker. However, again, we will have a Q&A portion at the end, so feel free to hold questions until then, or even drop it in the chat box. We'll continue to monitor that. So that is all for me. Anthony, the floor is yours.
Great. So as I just said goodbye to the Southern Education Foundation, it is a really great pleasure to be welcoming the future SELI cohort. When I participated with SELI, I had just graduated from Jackson State University with my master's in social work. And my experience as a teacher and functioning as a school social worker during my practicum, sorry about that, as my practicum drew me towards working in education. And since then, I have just finished my first semester as a doctoral student at the University of Denver, where I'm currently studying school psychology. When I was applying to SELI, I hope to get a better understanding of what education looks like at the state level and how states are addressing education equity within rural communities. Next slide, please. So as Kenita said, I was placed at the Georgia Department of Education, and I may refer to that as Godot in the future. I worked specifically in the Office of Whole Child, Whole School, and Whole Community on the Wellness and Wellbeing team. And I examined the relationship between racial equity and health across Georgia to see how students have been historically affected by health issues across the county. I began by reviewing the literature that focuses on health issues and aggregated the data that the department collected from the previous year and drafted a manuscript that will be later used for publication. I also helped improve the statewide screening form to increase the completion student follow-ups. And it was also a more comprehensive health screening approach to catch all of the health issues of the student, not just vision and hearing. So yeah, the previous form did the bare minimum to collect student health data. And I also collaborated with another fellow, Kelly, to work out this form and to contact school nurses to see what was feasible in terms of data collection and investigated which data would be useful to address health-based learning and development. Lastly, I created a communication tool on Twitter where I listed the local resources in rural communities, and they posted that all throughout the Twitter. It was really exciting to see my work published on Twitter. It's pretty cool. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that together we can create change. However, social change, like addressing education equity, takes time, and it's difficult to see the effects of our work in communities. However, I believe that by participating as a SELI Fellow, it has allowed me to see what can be accomplished through collective action and that our voices are more powerful as a group. Being a SELI Fellow also showed me how I can use research as a valuable tool to communicate about education equity. Next slide, please. I also learned that you have to speak up for yourself when something feels off. Do what you were brought on to do, communicate your expectations, and do not work for free. You shouldn't be working the night shift, getting your work done, but you should also be meeting the expectations of the foundation as well. Next slide, please. So in regard to my peers and what I learned from them, I had to remember that every hero wants to fight crime and makes the streets safer, for everyone. But every hero has a different reason for doing what they do, which is why it was so impactful to hear everyone's story. One of the questions that Kenita asked is to think about our why, because why you do things is just as important as how you do things. It was comforting to know that other people who were attending SELI was just as passionate about the issues that I cared about. And I want to encourage everyone to listen as passionately as you want to be heard when you are sharing your experiences. Next slide, please. In terms of the role that I would like to play in improving education equity is looking at yourself. Sometimes people think that, oh, like I am the greatest advocate on earth, but sometimes we miss it, and we have to look introspectively to make sure that we're addressing our unconscious and conscious biases. And even if you consider yourself an advocate and ally, it's so important to examine your own beliefs and to ensure the long-term improvement to education equity. The work starts with you. Next slide, please. So the things that I learned at Godot, it wasn't the actual material, but it was more about working in a larger system that I really took those things with me. You can have the best intentions and all the right data, but still not reach the hearts of the people who make decisions. Sometimes you have to bug certain people to get stuff done. Learn how to do it tastefully, though. Since my SELI experience, I've taken advantage of opportunities to keep in touch with those who I can reach out to in the future. Maintain those relationships and thank them for their time, and don't let them forget about you. Next slide, please. Lastly, all work is not the same. Sometimes you have to put in the long hours to do something that no one will recognize, but will be essential to the larger project. It's easy to compare your work to others. Their work may seem valuable, but your work matters too. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Is there any pressing questions for Anthony in his time at Georgia Department of Education?
If there are no questions for Anthony, I would like, Anthony, can you say, and I think you covered it, but just say again, why you would encourage anyone to apply to SELI?
I would encourage anyone to apply to SELI to, one, develop your leadership skills. Before I started SELI, I considered myself a leader, but I saw my peers like Antonia. I was like, wow, I have a long way to go. And so it's a good way to kind of see where you're at compared to others, and to kind of borrow those characteristics and improve yourself. It was also very empowering to get this experience to take with me also back to my university. And I've also taken what I've learned to work with the rural schools here in Colorado as well. But I don't recommend it if you want to do this for the money, because it's a lot of work and it probably won't be worth the money. But it's a fantastic time. I think what I gained from this, you can never put a price on it. I see there's a question in the chat.
So we do have a question in the box, which I think is a fantastic question. So if you don't mind, I would like Antonia to go, because I would like to hear for both of them to answer that question for you. So we will not, we'll parking lot that, and then we'll have both of them answer after Antonia is presenting. But that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you. Antonia, it's all you.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. As everyone has said, my name is Antonia Adams, and I am an undergraduate student. Actually, this is my junior year at the University of South Carolina Honors College. And I love the South. I love South Carolina, and I was incredibly privileged to have the opportunity to serve my entire state. So I am studying business economics with a minor in political science, and I have aspirations to obtain my Juris Doctor, which is my law degree, as well as a Master of Public Policy. And honestly, this fellowship is one of the things that has helped me shape and cultivate my passions for the future. I was also honored as the 2021 Jenny Looney Servant Leader Award winner. And many of you, if you were selected, will be able to vie for that. And that was just an incredible honor, just to be able to enjoy that and celebrate that, and just to feel like I've really made an impact. So As I went into SELI and this experience, what I hoped was, as an African-American woman who's in the South, who's aware of the history, was I wanted to learn more about what I could do to better serve my community. I wanted to understand the very complicated nuances of education, kind of what are the things that are causing issues, how can we develop solutions, and how can we cultivate and sustain these so that we can create true racial equity moving forward in the education system. Next slide, please. So a little bit about my fellowship. I was placed at the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education, located right in the heart of Columbia, South Carolina. The organization is a government institution, and it balances the needs of the state, students, and all the higher education institutions. So when you think of higher education, we're talking HBCUs, public schools, private schools, two-year schools, universities, colleges. We are just making sure that overall everyone is able to obtain higher quality education. So we make sure that there is a standard of academic excellence that is reached overall. And I worked in the Office of Student Affairs. So I made sure that I could work with students, that they were better understanding FAFSA, that they knew how to apply to college. And we also oversaw the state scholarships in the state of South Carolina. So next slide, please. So a little bit about what I did. First and foremost, my fellowship was mainly covering the FAFSA initiative. So we all know about the FAFSA, we all hear about it. If you're a student, you absolutely have to fill out this application in order to get the aid that you need for school. So your free application for federal student aid. And we had just obtained a grant from the National College Attainment Network to specifically target rural, minority, and low-income students in submitting and completing their FAFSAs. Now, you would probably think, okay, we're just going to grab a couple students and we're going to help them do their FAFSAs. But it turned out to be quite a challenge. And it was absolutely worth it because I was able to, as you see, host virtual FAFSA completion events. I created a toolkit. The South Carolina Commission on Higher Education tweeted out demo videos that I even created with captions to make sure that students would be able to work from home and work from wherever in order to obtain access to get their FAFSAs done. Now, it was a challenge because it was in the summer and we were working with students who had probably tuned out and weren't really listening to what they could do for higher education. But we were able to analyze and study the places in South Carolina that specifically needed this. We found where there were lower FAFSA completion rates, and we knew that these were students who probably couldn't afford to go to college without getting their Pell Grants, without getting their scholarships, and without getting their loans. And because they were rural and low income, they probably didn't have access to the resources they needed in order to even learn about the FAFSA. So we got together a team of FAFSA guides to go out into the state of South Carolina and make sure that they were able to obtain access to this information. And overall, we were successful. We were able to watch our FAFSA completion rates grow and help students go to college. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest ways to reach people is social media. Think about yourself. How many hours a day do you spend on your phone, mindlessly going through Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and you're not really thinking about what you're doing? Well, most of our target audience was high school students, college students, those people who were scrolling through, but we wanted to make sure that they were getting awareness for education and that they knew how to get access to the resources and scholarships that were around them. Therefore, I sat down and created a TikTok, which you can see a screen capture of here. I revamped the Facebook page, the Instagram page, the Twitter page, all under our college access name, which was SC Can Go. You can take a look at some of the information if you want. And what I did with this is I saw that there was an opportunity here. There was an opportunity to broaden our horizons. We were able to reach different populations that we may have not reached before, because not everybody knows what a government institution is or what they do. But if I'm making a fun TikTok where I'm dancing in the middle of Main Street and I'm doing a really silly challenge, then you're going to learn about the work that we do to make sure that all students better get access to education. And not only that, but we want to hear from the students. We want to make sure that we are able to address their needs, that we're answering their questions, and that we are constantly creating more equitable policies that ensure that everyone's able to go to college. And we get to have a little fun while we're doing it. Next slide, please. So this is the part that I am most proud of. And this program actually allowed me to continue my work at the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education. I was asked to continue as a part-time worker, and I am actually working as the college access consultant, and I'm in the office right now. So with the College Access Ambassador Program, College Process Ambassador Program, I wanted to make sure that students better understood how to go to college, not just hearing it from me as a worker or hearing it from the director of the organization or the president. I wanted people to hear from high school students themselves. So I took the time to sit down and structure an entire program, created a timeline, created flyers, as you can see, went over selections and perks, went through the process to get funding within the government program to give these students scholarships. And as a result, these are 10 high school students who are documenting their journey in applying to college. They are the ones who are now making TikToks. They are making tutorials. They are actually working in their community to help students with FAFSAs. And I've seen them take pictures and set up events on their own. They're learning as a high school senior how to apply to college, and they're mentoring and supporting other high school students. They're able to help clarify any misconceptions about college. And as a result, I'm mentoring them in cultivating their own leadership skills. Next slide, please. So I developed this program, just being completely honest, out of frustration. I saw that even though I was working at an excellent organization that was really doing so much for students, there were still spaces that we were missing. There were some students who were missing the information that we were putting out. There were some schools that weren't even answering the phone, and they weren't doing what they needed to help students. And I thought, you know, what better way to fix this? What better way to make this more accessible for everyone than to have the high school students create social media content for themselves? Isn't it fun when you make a TikTok or when you make a post and you send it to your friends and they like and comment and they interact? Well, I wanted other high school students to feel that experience and to do something meaningful. They are doing community outreach, and they are making change in their rural or urban or communities or wherever they are. They're also communicating to us. They're letting us know, how can we better shape policy to realistically and tangibly help high school students and help those get to college. And furthermore, this spring, many of our ambassadors are going to be attending meetings at the commission where they will talk with the actual policymakers and explain their own struggles, explain their own frustration, and tell us how we can better cultivate policy and how we can help them move forward. Next slide, please. So here are some major lessons that I have learned. Small changes matter. If one student is reached, that's all. With this, many of you are leaders who are applying to this. So you're thinking, I'm ready to go out there and change the world, and I want to create equity. But the reality is this isn't going to happen overnight. If we think about the fact that we've had segregated schools for many years, and many of them are still segregated, all we can do is keep up the work. Be persistent, keep going, and keep moving. And know that even if things don't happen overnight, even if you host an event or maybe you don't have the outreach that you hoped you had, you're doing something that matters. And if you're keeping that hard work up, then you're going to be able to really make the changes. Have passion over impact. Don't focus on immediate results. When I made my FAFSA toolkit and set up my video series and was sending out this information, I didn't watch FAFSA rates increase overnight. In fact, there were many events that my FAFSA guide set up and nobody showed up. Maybe one person came, or maybe they came and they weren't even prepared to do their FAFSA because they didn't know what they were supposed to bring. That's okay. It's okay to know that as long as you're getting that information out there, as long as you're working to create changes, that's what's important. The work is hard. It's frustrating. And Kanita can tell you that there were times that I was so tired and so frustrated. And I felt like I'm not really making a change and I'm not really making a difference. But I distinctly remember after one FAFSA event, I had a student who was a non-traditional student reach out to me and say, thank you so much for helping me with my FAFSA. She was one of the only people who came to my event, but because of her, she got the aid that she needed to go to school and provide a better life for her family. And that matters more to me. if I think about my career trajectory, I want to become a public policy lawyer. I want to work in the public atmosphere. I want to make sure that I'm working to provide legislation, that I am shaping policy, that if I have to provide a lawsuit, if I have to represent a client, if I have to work to provide better education for somebody, that I can do that. I want to remember my history. I want to think about the fact that my own parents sat in segregated classrooms, but now I don't have to do that, but I can learn so many lessons from that. And finally, in this entire SELI experience, find new ways to reach the current generation. This government organization had never thought about making a TikTok. In fact, when I brought it up to my director, she was like, "What is TikTok? What are you going to do on this?" But we have had an incredibly successful TikTok campaign. Our ambassador program has been incredibly successful. I just met with one this morning, I'll be meeting with another this afternoon. They're getting work done, and just be persistent, be passionate, and know that not only through SELI, but for the rest of your life, you'll be making an impact as a leader. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonia, and thank you, Anthony. I think we can go straight into the Q&A portion, but right before that, just want to talk about our application process. Like Kenita said, the application is open and live on our website. Just a couple things in the application packet. There is a Google form that is on our website to include your current resume, transcripts. Unofficial is okay. No minimum GPA is required, but we do look at that. 2 letters of recommendation. Also, what's included is a personal essay, which is just short answer responses. And this year we added a video response to one of the questions. Super excited about that. And then lastly, 3 references. And you're probably like, wow, this is a very rigorous application process. However, like Kenita said, it is competitive. So we are excited to get your application. And just for some housekeeping things, all materials should be submitted as attachments to one email so we can track that. All of this is on our website as well. And you have until March 1st, 2022 at 5 p.m. However, if you do need an extension, our information is at the end of this slide. Feel free to write that down and shoot us an email. Thank you.
So a couple of things before we go to Q&A. So I see the question in the box. So references are purely just people that, you know, are references that we can call and talk to and ask them more about your experience. And they can be the same people who write your letters of recommendation, because I usually get that question as well. A couple of things. So all parts are important, but I want to emphasize a few things. Your letters of recommendation, try to really ask people that can speak to your work and really know you. Like, I know sometimes we just get people who can do like a general letter, but it does not help, you know, elevate or make your application stand out if they can't really talk about your work, your impact, your interests, or commitment to education, equity, or social justice. So be very thoughtful about your recommendations and who you ask. And letters don't have to be long to be impactful. They just need to be able to speak to you. So I want to emphasize that. And then 2, you know, I think everyone, Asley, Anthony, and Antonia can tell you that I am a stickler for writing. So please do really be thoughtful about your applications and submitting good writing, proofing. You want to submit a really polished product. And again, they don't have to be long to be quality and well written, but I do pay attention to writing, and that's important because you also lots of times will be writing on behalf of your placement site. So we need to be able to send quality writers to our partners. So those things I just wanted to make sure that I really emphasized for you, because they are the things that stick out the most as we are scoring the applications, and they are scored. Yes. The recording will be posted on our website, and I think Asley may or may not send it out in an email via to all attendees, registrants. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I will turn it back over to you, Asley, so you can do Q&A.
Yes. So now is our questions and answers portion. I think we can start with the question after Anthony's presentation, and then we'll just go in order. Feel free after that to come out of off mute, and I will also elevate to everyone in the chat. So I think it's Kimran. What do you feel are some of the best leadership skills you've gained during SELI? And Antonia or Anthony, feel free to start us off.
Sure, I can start off. I would say one of the best leadership skills that I've learned is creativity. Being willing to step out of the box and do something that may not be quite what you would consider leadership. I would say when it comes to me, like making a TikTok, for example, to help a student better understand how to apply to college, it's probably a little weird to think about hopping on social media. I was literally dancing in the middle of Main Street. So people got to know me as the girl dancing on Main Street. But being creative, honestly, thinking outside the box, thinking about what can I do to add to my organization. One of the greatest things about SELI in this entire type of fellowship is that they're not just going to ask you to make copies. They're not going to ask you to go get coffee or to staple papers, or, I mean, that's part of leadership, but you're going to have the opportunity to really cultivate that creativity and bring something new to the table. So I would say that's one of the biggest parts of being a leader, is just being creative, stepping outside the box, and just getting very, very headstrong in what you're doing.
So one of the skills that I learned through working at the state level is how to get people to listen to you, because those stakeholders are the ones that are making the decisions. So for instance, most recently, I've been talking with my university, specifically my college, to create a public health education program. And so they're like, why would we do that? I was like, well, it'll make you more money. It'll make you look good because you're addressing an unmet need, but at the end of the day, what I want to do is actually help the kids that need these health educators in the schools. So you kind of have to frame it in a way that makes them want to do something. And that is a very powerful leadership skill, is how to get people to listen to you.
Thank you. Kirsten's question is, how do you both start the initiatives that you took on? Were you given projects, or did you have to come up with the projects yourself?
So I can speak to that. So with the projects, some of them were given to me and some of them I had the freedom to come up with. So for example, with the FAFSA Initiative, when I came in as a SELI fellow, that was one of the things that was placed into my lap. The opportunity to start working on FAFSA completion, to oversee the FAFSA guides, and to manage the NCAN grant. But when it came to the College Process Ambassador Program, as well as the social media revamp, that was something that I saw an opportunity for, and I was able to take that and develop it into something that I wanted. So I can't speak to everyone's experience, but I know for me, I was given assignments to complete in a timely manner, but then also with my extra time and with places where I just saw a genuine need to reach people, where I saw frustrations and where I saw things that weren't running as efficiently as they probably should have been, I had the chance to develop that leadership and step outside of the box and create new programs and add to the social media. When I told my supervisor that I was really a little heartbroken by the SC Can Go social media when I first saw it, because it wasn't colorful, it wasn't interesting, it wasn't fun and creative. He just handed me the login and he said, "This is yours now. I don't have time to do this, but if you can make this really fun and interactive for the community, then go for it." And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, so when I first started on, it was a little slow starting because they were still in the conceptualization phase of the project that they wanted me to do. And so it was a lot of doing something and then sending it off and getting feedback and then changing it. Sometimes it was changing the whole thing, and sometimes it was just changing the intro or the conclusion, but like it was always, it was a work in progress all the time. And so it was a lot of communication between my supervisors. So yeah, it really depends on which site you're at, because I remember a few of the fellows, they had different projects, and it looks different for some people.
And I'll just jump in quickly, just as a reminder that work sites actually submit work plans. So they submit what they feel are suggested assignments for the fellows. That's how we know how to match you based on what they're asking for, because it takes a particular skill set. So you do go, every fellow does go in having some set assignments, but we are also very thoughtful with our placement sites on a number of things. One is that this is not an administrative assistant or clerical assistant experience. Like we are wanting to give our fellows very meaningful work that is impactful for the organization, that will stretch them and broaden their skills. That is not to say you will not be asked to do administrative work. You know, I said all the time, I'm the COO in the company, but if I'm in a meeting with my president, guess who's going to be taking the notes? Like, everyone has to do some type of administrative work at some point. So you will be doing that, but that is not the purpose of this. And so Antonia will tell you, I'm very protective of my fellows. So if you are getting that experience, I will stop it right away to make sure you're getting a different experience. But also too, to give opportunity to co-create the experience. So we say, you know, give your work plan, but also listen to the fellows and have them have an opportunity to say, hey, if I can work a little bit more on this, or, you know, this is tied to my studies, I'm interested in this, you know, you have the opportunity to be able to speak up and help co-design some of your experiences as well.
Yeah, at first I was really scared of Dr. Williams, and I was like, oh, should I reach out to her by email? But she's the coolest person I've ever met. So please communicate with her and she will take care of you, I promise.
Well, thank you. I didn't pay him to say that.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question from Taylor. And I think this is for you, Dr. Williams. So what kind of support exists to help fellows incorporate what they learn into their post-fellowship life and help ensure they do this work in the South long-term?
That's a fantastic question. So once you are part of the SCF family, you are part of the SCF family. So we try to keep you engaged. We try to still be available to support as you need. Like, I actually regularly still mentor a lot of our fellows. Like, there's some that I either talk to, do regular check-ins on phone. I have one that I do lunch with regular from our 2017 cohort. So we are still available all the time. You can reach out to us. We send out job opportunities. We try to keep a network. We are actually really working on our alumni engagement strategy. And I have to shout out Ashley on that, because she's doing a lot of leadership around that. And so we are trying to make sure that you know that this is a family, that you are an extension of SEF. And so you just have to reach out to us, and we will try to make sure we have alumni engagement opportunities. Like, we did check-ins this last year with a few of our several cohorts, several of our cohorts. And we just try to stay connected. But a lot of that is also, the onus is on the person to let us know what they need. To reach out. And as Anthony said, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are there to be a resource how we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we send jobs. I review resumes all the time. We do. Actually, someone just sent us a letter. We're filling out a letter of recommendation for a fellowship opportunity just today. So we're here to support you in whatever way we can as you advance in your careers.
Thank you. This is for
your thought partner. You know, Anthony said we were talking, well, I think one night, it might've been like from 8 o'clock that night, and we were talking about, you know, what this work looked like and why it's important that she stays in this work. So yeah, just reach out.
Honestly, Dr. Williams will help you so much with making sure that you remain passionate, because it was 8 o'clock at night, and this is when I was working with the FAFSA completion, and I had just set up an event and nobody came. And I was so frustrated, and she just encouraged me so much. So, you know, that's one of the best things about SELI, is that these are passionate people. They don't just care about the work, they care about you. They care about making sure that you feel like you're growing and developing and creating some type of change in the South. So honestly, one of the best teams to work with.
Oh, that's so nice.
Thank you. I know.
We have a question in the chat, and then Cameron, I think you have your hand raised, so I'll go to you, and then we'll end because we have like 2 more minutes. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. What were some challenges you faced, if any, at the beginning of your experience with your organizations, and how did you take on and face them? I think this is a good question.
It's a great question. Yes.
I can start. So the biggest challenge that I faced with my organization was that they were creating solutions, but so much of it seemed out of touch with the entire state of South Carolina. I've lived here for my whole life, and I had only heard of the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education once or twice, and I didn't understand how much work they were doing. I didn't understand everything about state scholarships, and I was a pretty involved student in high school, so I thought, if I'm not hearing about their initiatives and if I don't know about what they're doing, then how many other students that may not even be in the position of privilege that I was in are missing out on these resources and this information? So part of it was having an honest conversation with my supervisor and asking him, do you feel like we're really maximizing our outreach? And he said no. And that is part of why I said earlier, being creative is so important in creating different avenues of outreach and being willing to sit down and say, let's rethink how we're going to do this. And also in getting feedback about how can we shape the public policy that we're doing to be more relevant and applicable to those who may be struggling. Do we lower a GPA requirement? Do we put this in front of a legislator that says we need to change something to make sure that more students have access to higher education? So it's just about thinking about the community and thinking about the environment in which you're working and better understanding, the South, whether you're from the South or not. It's a very unique culture, and every state, every single geographic area is going to have its own culture. So being respectful to that, but also understanding how to maximize your impact is key.
Yeah, I think getting oriented to the project was probably one of the biggest challenges. When we first had our meeting, she had dropped a folder of like 60 different research articles. And she was like, you need to read these. So I just like went through each one and read them. Then you get kind of good at, reading research. But it was just getting oriented to what they were trying to do and what knowledge is already out there in regards to the project. Oh, how did I take them on and face them? Just gotta dive in, be brave.
Communicate, like you said.
Yeah. Yep. And I was going to say, I want to really underscore the importance of what Anthony said about communicating with SEF. Like some of the challenges you just don't have to take on. Like some of them should come actually from me or Asley or someone at SEF, as we are the ones behind the relationship. And so some of these things, obviously you guys are adults, you should, step into your agency and advocate for yourselves, but some of them should just be dealt with at an organizational level. So you let us know and we can handle on your behalf if it's something that you want or just not comfortable speaking about. We had a fellow who actually overheard something being said, just a conversation, and this was a couple years back, a conversation about a particular issue that was sensitive to her and probably shouldn't have been had in the workplace anyway. And she came to me and I said, we thought about it, we talked it through, and I was like, we can handle it this way. I can talk to the organization or you can do it yourself. And it turns out she felt okay doing it herself. And it turned into her doing a whole kind of training on sensitivity for the organization that they still use today. So some of these challenges can really turn into some really good, fruitful things for organizations as well. But her first step was to reach out to us and us to talk it through. So definitely listen to Anthony and communicate with us. And then Asley, I think you said we have time for one more question, but I know it's time. If people need to go, they can. We'll answer the last question and we'll share the recording just in case.
Yes, you can go ahead and do it.
Okay, hello you all. I'm Cameron Lawrence, a senior biology major at Clark Atlanta University. I'm a current UNCF K-12 education fellow, and I saw UNCF on y'all's list. And I just wanted to know, as a host site. I just wanted to know what kind of work you all did with UNCF.
So we can actually share. I think it might even be, so you can reach out to Ashley directly and ask for that, just for the interest of time, because there was a lot of different things. So we had 2 different work plans, but happy to share that type of work of what they were able to do with our fellows. We've had 2 fellows there so far.
Yep, and I was gonna add, Melody Andrews was at UNCF for 2021 cohort, and on our Instagram was her whole experience. So if you want to check that out and see other highlights, feel free to go on our Instagram.
Perfect, that's even better. Thank you.
What's y'all's Instagram?
It's actually going to come up in the next slide. So thank you for the questions and answers portion. Feel free to reach out to myself or Kenita. This is our email. You can contact us directly. And then finally, for our social media, feel free to add us. It's our Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
I don't see the Instagram on there.
Oh, okay. So it is the same as the Twitter.
Okay.
Sorry. At Southern Ed Found.
Okay, and so we should update that, obviously. Instagram is a newer thing for us. We just really, and our 2021 cohort actually was very helpful in making it kind of pop for us.
Awesome. Well, that is all for us today. Thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing your application.
And please reach out if you have any questions. Want to thank both Anthony and Antonia for their time today. And on just being outstanding fellows and being supportive of the program. And yeah, everyone enjoy the holiday season and reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.